So sorry, we don't look like the guy in the picture. We're not as good looking as him, but you get two of us. Unfortunately, Brandon, who was going to give this talk, he's sick and lost his voice, so we're going to help cover through this.
Yep. So just bear with us. Eric's a little nervous here.
Yeah. It's all right. We'll get through it.
But it'll all work out. We'll get through it.
Yeah.
So Eric, you want to start off?
Yeah.
Oh, first of all, how many people here deal with creating video creatives for advertising? How many of you guys use influencers in your videos? Nice. All right, we're going to go through some of the pain points we've experienced using influencers, and we can make this a little interactive and kind of talk through some of the pain points you guys might have experienced and see how we can use some of the tech we have to solve it.
Yep. All right, so going through quickly, as you know, video is king. Video ads have high engagement, great conversion rate, and we are bringing influencers to videos, so that will increase the conversion rate even more and provide a greater trust and brand engagement for that. Working with influencers, so a lot of you have probably worked with larger influencers, maybe through an agency or directly with the influencer, and it can be difficult to optimize and localize. Like, do you get someone in the exact right language or the exact right location? Also, it could take a long time, right? From the very first step, could take you 2 weeks or more to just get the content. Whereas with micro-influencers, they're a little bit easier to work with, easier to optimize and localize, and they also can knock out the content in a day or two. And just want to show you two videos, one of a large influencer, one of a micro-influencer here. We can move on, and we'll try to think about how to figure that out later. So speaking about influencers a little bit more before we get into depth about working with influencers is the power of the micro-influencer. You can get one big influencer with an audience of 1 million, or you can get 1,000 micro-influencers with 1,000 audience each. The engagement rate is much higher. Now, this is when they're posting it to their social channels. The engagement rate is much higher. The cost is much lower. And you can also find people in a lot of different languages, the micro-influencers. They also use a lot more apps and play a lot more games. And the authenticity is much higher when you're working with micro-influencers versus a large influencer. Now we're going to get into some of the different challenges in creating influencer-generated content or working with influencers. We broke it down to 4 major categories, and Ravi will be helping me speak across some of these 4 categories. The first one is identifying and hiring the right influencers, then educating the influencers on the product or app, then how do you manage the influencers, and then getting the deliverables that you can actually use. So speaking on the first point is the availability of influencers. And we've worked with influencers for a few years. Sometimes influencers will say, hey, my grandma's sick, I can't work on a video for 2 weeks. Some influencers, they're not available all the time. Maybe they have a full-time job. So availability is a big challenge to understand with influencers. And then how do you know if they can even use a mobile or stream a mobile app or record a mobile app? Do they have the mobile capture? Do they have the right OS? Maybe they don't have a device that's strong enough to use your app or play your game. What's the resolution on their face camera? Is it good enough, or does it look like really cloudy? Also, how do you optimize and A/B test? If you find something that works, this influencer that has a beard worked really well for my app or my game. How do I optimize, and how do I get more people like him? Finding cost-efficient talent. We kind of went into it in the slide that the videos didn't work. Is how do you find someone who isn't going to charge an arm and a leg? And one thing of note here is influencers. I come from the mobile space, and influencers actually charge very different than most of the time than what mobile marketers may think. They like to charge a flat fee, and they don't really like working on CPI. So how do you find kind of a happy medium and get your mobile app out there? Also, knowing the target audience. So do you know your target audience enough that you know which influencers to work with? If your target audience is, for your app is stay-at-home moms or something, is the influencer going to be a good influencer for that? Do they speak to your target audience?
Yeah, so essentially, with influence-generated content, when we talk about traditional digital advertising, you create ad groups, you talk about image ads, you kind of iterate on various little aspects of the ad. Taking the simple example of changing the call to action text on an image ad and seeing which ones resonate better. Think of using influencers as a way of relating to your audience. So if you can hire one person for $20,000 to do a video ad, and hopefully they resonate with your target user group, or you can hire 20, and then you've got 20 kind of variations to figure out what type of demographic or influencer, what kind of type of personality or look will resonate with them. It gives you more bites at the apple.
Moving on to the second point, educating and preparing influencers. So do you provide a full script for the influencer? Do you let them talk in their own voice that they usually use? Do they have a script that they just read out? Because you want to make sure it's natural. You also want to provide guidelines of what parts of the app or what parts of the game that you want them to focus on. If it's a game, do they have to get to a certain level for them to start recording or start creating this particular content? Should they be, if it's a dating app, should they be using a certain feature in their video ad content? And how do you make sure that they get that? Also, with some apps and some games, how do you get them, in-game items, right? How do you deliver them in-game items so that they're not like a newbie and just they're creating a video and it looks like they just started playing the game or just started using the app? So that's another thing is the unlocking of the content features.
Yeah, the key here is you want to make the video look authentic. Like the influencer needs to know what your app or game does and how it plays. You don't want them going off the script being like, okay, yeah, I understand that this app does this and I got to hit these points, and they're navigating the app and they get to a spot and they're like, oh, I don't know what this does. And it kind of creates this disconnect of authenticity. You want the video to feel like the influencer is a fan of your product or your app. And how do you properly educate them and give them enough guidance where they're hitting the points that resonate well with your audience, or that these types of features or these things are working well in your game or app? And how do you blend that with making the video seem natural and authentic, where it's, looking at an influencer, they clearly like this app and they know what they're doing, and it's not something that's kind of somebody reading from a script.
Going over one of the third points is how do you deal with the contract and terms? You have to make sure that you own the rights to use this video. If you're going to use it on your social channels, if you're going to use it on Google or Facebook, how do you make sure that the contract is correct? The contracts for influencers could be very different. You may have to work with an agency, and also one of the things is the terms. A lot of influencers require half payment up front, and a lot of influencers are spread out. They're in Europe, they're South America, and how do you pay them in their local currency, and how do you pay them after they've done the correct content? Also, validating the deliverables and going through approvals. Is there a way that that you have to make sure that, okay, this content is good enough, I'm going to pay them? If it's not, do you still have to pay them some money, or do you have to have them keep doing that and giving them feedback? Also, communicating with influencers can be very tricky, and from our experience, it takes multiple channels of communication. You're emailing them back and forth about what's going on, and maybe if they have tech issues, you're on Discord with them or on Skype with them, and trying to talk to them about how to use the app or how to use the game to effectively create a video. The fourth point is getting deliverables you can use. As I mentioned before, not all influencers will have all the right equipment to capture. They may have, do they have high resolution on their camera? Can they actually capture the audio? We found out from a lot of testing and a lot of working with apps that on Android, there has to be a certain flag that allows for the game audio or the app audio to be captured. Otherwise, if someone has a certain device, like some Samsung devices have a screen recorder. So these things need to be known ahead of time so that they can facilitate a lot of communication. Also, multiple video files. So what a lot of people will do is they'll create, influencers will create a video that's just one single file of their face cam right on top of the app or the game. But you can't really do much around that. It's very difficult to edit it. So getting multiple video files is pretty essential. One video of their face and one video of the app and gameplay, so that you can create, you can put their face anywhere on the video. Also, storing and organizing raw assets. Some of the videos that the influencers submit are 2-3 gigabytes. And how do they send those? Do they send those in a Google Drive, and maybe they remove it after a week, and then maybe you lost it, you can't get it back? Also, what version is it? If they've done a new version, do you know if that's the right file name? Or do you know if this is the new one or that's the new one? Also, editing. Let's talk more about that.
So, a lot of times influencers might be capable of editing video, but they're not really editing video in the sense of creating ads. So, if you're involving your own internal editors or you have external editing teams, getting an influencer to create some content, then getting a Google Drive link and then passing it on to the editor, and then the influencer revises it, or that contract somehow falls apart. How do you know, how do you control all of that flow? Basically, there's that workflow of getting content, getting it edited, and then getting it in the hands of the marketers to place the ads. So now we're going to jump into that was kind of the problems that we have encountered so far in our experience with dealing with influencer-generated content. And now we're going to jump into what OperaVent does to kind of solve these issues. So OperaVent was a company that was born with the vision of equalizing the playing field between traditional media stars and social media stars. You have a bunch of social media influencers that are kind of at the top of the pyramid that are making a full-time living off of it. And then you have a bunch of people underneath that are striving to be social media influencers, but they're juggling also a full-time job and trying to make ends meet. And in reality, they are undervalued, and we were born on the mission of kind of equalizing that playing field and increasing the value of these mid to micro-sized influencers. So we started by building products around helping influencers monetize, and mostly in the gaming space. That's where our CEO, Brandon, comes from. And so we've built a bunch of technology along our path. When Eric joined, we added a bunch of things around attribution, because he comes from the mobile attribution space. And so we built a lot of technology that allows us to auth influencers on various platforms, understand their capabilities and understand their demographics, and kind of create workflows that help us manage them at scale. Because it's easy to manage 5 big influencers, but it's hard to manage a group of 200 or 500 influencers. So in the process, we've created rich user profiles where we know, hey, these are the devices they have, this is the camera they have, this is their demographic. We can surface work samples, create reviews and ratings, and then we're able to use that. We have about 60,000 influencers on our platform, and we're able to use that data to kind of figure out, hey, if one piece of content worked or this type of influencer worked and you want to try influencers that are in the same vein, we can quickly find lookalike influencers. We know their availability. We surface influencer management tools to be able to kind of whitelist, blacklist, tag, group, and somewhat organize influencers that you might work with. The second part, in terms of educating and preparing influencers, one of our products, IMP, which is Influencer Marketing or Management Platform, really leverages the power of teams. So we build groups of micro and mid-sized influencers in teams. So teams can range from 50 to 3,000, some of our bigger teams. And that allows us to establish educated ambassadors for whatever this product is. So if we get an app wants to create some influencer generated content, we can empower a brand ambassador in the team to really be knowledgeable on the app and be our kind of first line of defense in terms of, hey, influencer recorded a video, they didn't touch on these points, or there was something wrong with it. They can go and coach them. So you don't got to get involved in managing all these influencers. We also have a bunch of attribution, thanks to Eric. So we can educate them in app by knowing for sure that they've spent 5 hours in the app or they've reached a certain level in a game. We can also, through our quest system, we can kind of distribute codes. If we need to distribute codes to unlock characters or give out currency or credits in an app, we're able to do that programmatically at scale. And workflow quests, this is a big part of our system. So essentially, when an influencer goes to try to do a piece of influencer-generated content, they get presented steps, and it's like contract terms. They read those, they agree to them. They get the material for what they need to do. We can attribute that they've installed the app. We can attribute that they've spent X amount of time in the app or gotten to a certain level. And then they can submit and upload their video, which gets organized in, it gets directly uploaded. It lives there forever. There's a history of what they've uploaded, along with ratings and feedback, so they can see if it's been accepted or rejected. Once it gets accepted, it shows them their money in their wallet. It serves as a communication tool. It's very clear as to, hey, I've accomplished my deliverable or I haven't hit my deliverable. And then it gets verified, and we can process payment to them. So touching on getting the deliverables you can use, again, with what we're doing in terms of attribution, we're able to tell what kind of devices and technical capabilities they have, because our staff is focused on creating or solving the problems that come up. We're creating guides, and we have 24/7 support. People are like, oh, I can't get my mobile game to record, or I can't figure out how to use this thing to create this video. There's not time lost in that communication because they can reach off to our support staff that are educated on that process. And then everything's directly uploaded to our server. We do programmatic validation of like resolution, length, file types. You don't have to hunt through emails or worry about expiring links. And we surface everything to the consumer in a dashboard with approval buttons and validation. So something like this, where they can come in, they can see the influencer, see the team, see the game, how many cameras, language, people that are in the video, gender, the experience, the style, what the content is. So it could be like, you could use this for like tutorial videos, casual gameplay videos, whatever you're trying to do. You can get access to the unedited raw content as well as the cut content, approve it, give any notes and ratings, and finish that process.